Hello, my name is Dylan Nordhagen, and today I'm going to be showing off my senior project. So, I've been working on this over the course of the spring 2022 semester. It is a video game made as a solo project in Game Maker Studio 2 titled Flipside Sprint. So, rather than just sitting here on the title screen and explaining everything about the game, I figure show don't tell, I'll talk about it, but let's get straight into the gameplay. So, Flipside Sprint is an endless runner. So, you're playing as this little robotic character, and rather than having to progress through multiple levels, you're just in one giant, infinite length level, and your goal is to survive as long as possible. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've probably caught on to the central gimmick of this game, and that is that this is not a platformer with a jump button. Instead, you have the ability to shift the direction of gravity between down and up, down and up, and so on and so forth. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to address when making a video game about gravity. One of these things is, well, how do you balance the difficulty of the game? Because theoretically, you could put any obstacles and then players could just float over them and not interact with them because they have complete control over the y-axis as opposed to a jump which has a fixed arc. And the solution to this can be seen on the top right of the screen. You have this bar that I like to call the air meter. It decreases when you're suspended in the air, and it increases when you're on the ground or when you collect these little crystals. I missed that one. Oops. I'm sure there'll be plenty of other instances to show that. But what happens when the air meter runs out is that you lose the ability to flip gravity, and thus you're susceptible to whatever obstacles are coming your way. If you touch these spikes or if you get pushed off of the left side of the screen, you can't clear the obstacles in time. That is an automatic game over. So the air meter not only forces players to actually engage with the obstacles, but it also creates a risk versus reward scenario where you're trying to clear these obstacles as precisely as possible to minimize the amount of meter that you lose. And likewise, these diamonds that you can collect to refresh your air meter, they are usually placed in locations that are harder to reach, and thus you have to evaluate, do I try to go for the diamond and risk death, or do I try to play it safe and hope that I have enough meter to survive whatever is coming next? Now, I called this game an endless runner, and a lot of endless runners tend to use procedural generation for the obstacles that you are forced to face. But this is another thing that changes with a game about gravity, because you can't just have objects on the ground, you've got to have obstacles on the top and in the middle and so on. So, rather than doing procedural generation, I ended up creating a number of small segments of level, which I call room chunks. And then what happens is that these chunks can be randomly arranged in any order to create the illusion of something that is infinite in length and completely random. So even though the chunks are the same, the order that you might see them is completely different every time. So no two playthroughs are exactly the same. But if you play the game for long enough, you might start to notice repeating rooms, and you might develop strategies on how best to overcome them. Another thing about this game and its focus on gravity is I really wanted to have strong visual theming, so it's clear at any point which direction gravity is facing and where your character is supposed to be heading towards. So you'll notice this neon sort of aesthetic that permeates throughout the entire game, and the sort of reinforcement that blue as a color means that gravity is pointed down for the background, and up means gravity's, or red means gravity is pointed up. As I mentioned before, this was an entirely solo project. I really thought not only are video games just like a passion of mine, something I would like to do following graduation, working on these, but I thought it was a really good method of combining all the different forms of media that I've learned to use during my time at university. So the programming was all done by me. As I said, this was done in Game Maker Studio 2. All the visual assets were done by me, and the soundtrack is done by me. You've probably heard at this point a couple of different songs that play. The soundtrack changes depending on how far into the game you are, like how high up your timer is. So just so you don't have to listen to the same thing for multiple minutes onwards, but there is a secret hidden option to set the music to one of the 3 songs that play during gameplay here, if you have like one favorite that you really want to listen to. And then there's music for the title screen and the game over theme, and I had a feeling I was gonna be dying soon, but that's good. I can show off the game over screen. So when you die, you get to see your time, and then here it shows you your top 3 high scores, and I actually had to delete some of my older high scores for the purpose of recording this, because I had a feeling I wouldn't be beating them, but if you beat one of the high scores, you get this new record text, and you get to put in a 3-letter name for to associate with your records. I'm just going to put first 3 letters of my name, D-Y-L. And then these high scores are also displayed on the title screen, and they are saved, so if you close this game and open it back up, you'll be able to find them just fine. So you can pass this game around with friends and compete to see what the highest score you guys can get are. So now that I've shown off the game, I'll switch over to Game Maker and show a little bit of behind the scenes. Welcome to my Game Maker workspace. It's a little bit cluttered right now, but that's fine. So this is where all the programming for the game happens, pretty much. I'll open here. We have these list of objects. So this is everything that you see in the game, pretty much, like the player, the hazards, the health pickups, and other more abstract stuff. So like the keyboard that you use when you get a high score, or the animation that plays when you die, or the object that saves all your scores and checks to see if you got a high score, and makes sure that the scores are maintained between sessions of the game. So I'll show off a couple of highlights for this code. The player controls are something I'm really happy with. I made some tweaks, but this was something that kind of stuck from the beginning. I did have to make some changes because I was doing playtesting for this game towards the end of this project's development, and I had to fix some bugs and whatnot. I don't remember if I mentioned that there is actually a sort of progression difficulty system where the multiplier for how fast your air meter increases and decreases changes the longer or the higher up your timer is. Unfortunately, making the screen scroll faster came with a lot of problems because of the system that I was using with the chunks, as I described. So this is the sort of concession difficulty modifier. Let's actually go over to the controller object and talk a little bit about how this system works. So basically what this does is it loads in all 40 chunks at the beginning, and it randomly generates what to load. And there is a system in place to make sure you don't get the same chunk like twice in a row or too frequently. And then basically what happens is that it places these little markers at the start and end of each chunk so that when the markers leave the screen, the controller knows, okay, I need to get ready to load the next chunk because this one's starting to end. So let's actually go over from the workspace to one of the rooms that the game is hosted in. And this looks like a mess. I am completely aware. We'll disable all of these and we'll just open a random chunk here. So you'll notice that these chunks are divided into different sublayers. The instance layer is for the actual collision of the platforms, so I can disable the graphics that I'm using, and you can see the collision. This is usually not visible. It's just there for collision purposes. What you usually see instead are the tile sets for the game, and then the top chunk kind of holds it all together, and that's also where any hazards or pickups like those crystals are stored. They're stored in the top one. And then these all have to be visible in order for the player to actually see what's going on. If you left all of these visible, you would just have invisible scrolling objects and you wouldn't be able to tell where things are or why you're not able to move forward and whatnot. So it is a lot of different connected things. And I've used a little bit of Game Maker in the past, but this was a bit of a big learning experience on how to use this program and what goes into making a game, and I definitely got a lot out of it. But I'm very happy with the end results. So that, I think, is going to sum up this presentation. Thank you for watching.